Good morning and welcome to Ed's World, where it's always morning, even in the afternoon. I'm your host, Jay Edgar, and I'm joined today on my left by a newcomer to the podcast world, somebody who's hoping to break in, so I'm hoping that we'll get him some recognition and get him going. We are talking today to the Chill Gamer, Joe. Welcome to Ed's World.
Hey there, thank you for having me on. Pleasure to be here.
We've got a big, full show for us to get to today, too, so let's go through what some of the things that we might be talking about are going to be today. Of course, we're going to be talking about COVID-19 and all the fun that goes around there. We'll actually talk about the numbers because nobody else has at this point. Ilhan Omar has demanded a rent cancellation, so we'll talk about what that could mean. Some of the states have begun to open up, so we'll talk a bit about what the regulations are and which states are officially open for business. Armed protesters protested in Michigan's capital, so we'll review that. Remdesivir has been approved by the FDA for emergency use. We'll talk a bit about what that means. And de Blasio has decided to throw a certain race under the bus, and we'll figure out what that means for New York. In addition, we'll talk about 2020. Tara Reade's allegations have intensified to the mainstream media, and Biden actually approached this for the first time and went on NBC. We'll watch a little bit about what happened there. The left took some time and reminisced about war criminal George W. Bush, so we'll talk a bit about that. And Justin Amash has formed an exploratory committee to see if it can actually get into the presidential race, so we'll talk a bit about that. General Flynn had some documents unsealed by the FBI, so we'll talk a bit about what that means for the country going forward. And finally, Kim Jong-un is confirmed to be alive. We'll talk a bit about that. And Trump has tweeted about possibly going with some tariffs. And the economy has started to show for that. It's going to be all of this and more over on Ed's World. Thanks for checking us out over live on YouTube, DLive, Twitch, Periscope, and Facebook. And if you can't catch us live on any of those, you can go ahead and find us on the audio platforms on iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play. Remember, if you're over on iTunes, leave us that 5-star rating and a good review. That always helps us move up the charts. It helps us overcome the algorithms. And before we get into anything else, make sure you go ahead and check us out over on freedomscoop.com. Freedomscoop.com is your one-stop shop for all of your news and commentary. We have got great shows like The Generational Gap, who will be on a little bit later tonight. The R-Rated Conservative, who will be on also a little bit later tonight. Freckles and Britt just put up their newest video, so go and check out their conversation with friend of the show, Seawall. He went over there to talk with them about open borders and immigration policy. It was a great conversation. I urge everybody to go check that out. You can also check out Stephen Ignoramus, who will be returning tomorrow from his hiatus after his new EP dropped, and Wyatt Birkenhoff rounds out our group, so go and check us all out over there. After the lengthy introduction, it's always time to find out about the best part of our show. So, you're a newcomer to this realm, but you've been a little bit in the alternative media before. But before you do anything else, tell us a bit about yourself.
Well, not much really to tell. I'm just a normal guy. Been on social media for quite a while. Been following news on various things. My political leanings went from pretty hardcore conservative Republican to a libertarian and recently anarchist. I like gaming. I work full time at the moment. I'm considered an essential employee, thankfully. So we haven't suffered too much in that regard, though my wife is out of work as she's a school bus driver. And, they closed the schools down until, at least I think they're hoping they're going to reopen in September, but there's some talk that they won't reopen until January. So it's like, I don't know how that's going to work out.
What state are you in, if you don't mind me asking?
I am in Tennessee.
Oh, I've been there before. It's a nice place. I got family down there.
It can be. It can be. Just don't jump on Facebook. You wouldn't think people were nice.
Well, you are trying to break yourself into the alternative media, but you have done some game streams in the past. So tell us a bit about why you decided to make this decision to get into this wild and wacky world where the mainstreams hate us and want us to die at some point.
Well, I feel like I have a lot to say, and most of my hesitation on getting into it is, would I be able to fill out an entire show for whatever kind of schedule I decided for myself? I do a lot of live streaming, but I try to keep it family friendly there to draw in the widest audience that I can. And because I feel I don't see the need for being vulgar on a regular basis or at all. Although you couldn't tell it from my Twitter, I don't know. It just comes off wrong when you're talking. I feel it makes you sound less intelligent, but apparently science disagrees with me or something.
Any ideas on what you plan to cover as you go along, or?
Yes, I've actually been thinking about that. Definitely, obviously, in color cover politics, gaming. I'm thinking adding doing technology and religion, and I know that last one's like super, super hot button, even more so than politics.
Hmm. So I got to ask you this, just with the fact that you're on to those topics here coming on, is Blizzard a yay or a nay for you right now?
Blizzard's an A. I won't sub to any of their games. I won't buy any more of their games. I do own several games. I've got all three Diablos. I've got StarCraft, Brood Wars. I've got quite a few of their games already,
Hmm.
but I won't buy any more of them. What they did to that one gamer who stood up for the Hong Kong protest at that competition, even though they backed off, it was too little, too late.
That's
Hold on just a minute. My daughter is trying to get my attention. Let me take care of this. I'll be right back. I am so sorry.
huh? So we will talk a bit about what's going on here in just a sec, because we've got the empty chair here going on. Let's take care of that for a second here. So, well, I do want to thank the guests for coming in here, but I'll start talking as we go along here before we get started here. So it looks like, oh, we got a guest back here. Let me get that taken
I'm
care
so
of.
sorry about that. I thought I had my door shut properly, and apparently I didn't. My daughter pushed in, and she was wanting my attention. I just handed her off to my wife.
Those kids, hey,
Oh yeah,
they are a joy.
they are. They are. I I was nervous first becoming a parent, and but now it's just like I can't imagine life without her.
Well, let's check in with the live chat here. It doesn't look like we've got a lot of conversation going on, but we've definitely got the sticker party going on here. Harvey McLeod is in from Twitch saying, "Yay, open them up," and Ron Helton is over on D Live with that big sticker party. And hey, if you if you've never been on D Live before, head on over there. They got great stickers there, and their stickers do translate into the Restream bot, so I can see them from here. They're a little bit small, but I can see them from here.
Right.
Uh, they got great stickers, and they've got that weird cryptocurrency system that supports a lot of us here. So make sure you go over there and check out the channel over on DLive. That is dlive.tv/edsblog Twitter with no one in place of the I, unlike my Twitter name. So go and check us out over there. But for now, I think it's time for us to get into topics. What do you think? You think you're ready?
I think I'm ready.
All right. So top of the news stack we have, of course, is going to be the numbers, because Worldometer, as of right now, is giving us some numbers that we have here. Total in the world right now, we have hit 3,640,692 cases. Worldwide, we are at 251,838 deaths and 1,192,920 recovered. So this is getting to a point where it's definitely worth noting as far
Yeah.
as the death count goes, but it's not anywhere near what we thought it was going to be, especially with the infection rate versus the death rate. Because once again, there are 7 billion people on this planet right now, and only 3 million of them have got this disease. So what are we
It's,
looking at on that?
I think it's petered out. I'm looking at the CDC numbers right here, and they're showing from February through May, while there was definitely an increase, especially in March, they're showing a decline from April 11th onwards. Cases are significantly dropping. As a matter of fact,
Hmm.
or at least I should say deaths are significantly dropping from April 18th to April 25th. There was almost 7,000 less deaths in that period than in the period before from 4/4 to 4/11.
Hmm.
It's it's crazy, and people are still flipping out. It's like, what are you flipping out about? It's a 0.5% mortality rate. It's no worse than the flu.
Hmm.
People are complaining. Oh, if you're asymptomatic, you can give it to the people who are at high risk. Well, those high risk people should shelter in place if they need to. We should be aware that we could be carrying it, and until we get better treatments for it to reduce that mortality rate even more,
Oops.
hopefully, we should definitely do things voluntarily to help out. But this lockdown is way overblown. I was reading in 1967 and 68 there was another worldwide pandemic going on, and by all accounts, it's worse than COVID-19 in terms of infection rate. But there was a lot less deaths. There was no shelter in home orders, at home orders, and as a matter of fact, the whole response to it was carried out by the medical community. It had no political involvement whatsoever, and relatively few people died from it.
Well, you got to keep in mind in the 60s, though, we didn't have Twitter to amplify everybody's opinion either.
You're not wrong there.
Yeah, that does seem to be one of the killers that we see going on with this. Is just it's the Twitter reaction out of it more than anything else that's dragging us down. That's making all of this, I think, worse than it really needed to be.
Yeah, yeah, I would agree with that right there, because we are so much more connected than we were in the 50s and 60s, and so you've got we are inundated with information, and fear is such an easy emotion to leverage. So I mean, it's I understand why people are afraid. This is a scary thing. Um, you know, Especially for I imagine millennials, especially, and Zoomers. They've never encountered anything like this, so they're rightfully scared. But for for myself, born in '78, so I've seen SARS. I've seen I saw the swine flu go through, and the reaction to those worldwide was not nearly as bad as it is to this COVID-19, and there's just no reason for it.
Well, of course there is. It's politically expedient.
Oh
Oops,
yeah,
did I
you're
say that
right
out loud?
there. You're not wrong. I mean, say it all you want. It's the truth.
Well, one of the things that I wanted to focus on this story, and this is pretty much the only reason I'm bringing up the numbers, because, I mean, there's a reason the mainstream's not talking about it anymore, because we're not getting new cases to the level that we thought that we were going to be getting at this point in this. I mean, at this point, if we'd listened to the mainstream, I mean, if you listen to Sticks, yeah, we would have been at a place where maybe should have taken concern. But if you'd have listened to the mainstream media, half the country would have been gone by this point. If
Yeah,
we had gone by this
and
point.
because they're not reporting on the new numbers because it's no longer fitting into their agenda.
Hmm.
And that's all it is.
Well, there's been some discrepancy with the numbers, and that was part of the reason that I wanted to bring it up here. And this is coming from within the CDC at this point. So the Worldometer's estimate here, let me get down to the United States section of this. In the USA, the Worldometers is saying 69,000 611 deaths across the United States, which is once again well lower than we ever thought it was going to be at this point. But we go over to the provisional numbers coming out of the CDC. This is from the National Vital Statistics System. They show us a completely different picture. Let me zoom out on here so I can read this a little bit better for you here. They're telling us that total deaths are looking at closer to 38,576, less than half of what they said. Of course, now we're also looking at the fact that they see deaths from all causes is 739,600 for the year.
Right.
Percent of expected deaths is 93%, which is a little bit lower than we thought it was going to be at this point. Pneumonia deaths, 66,094. Deaths with pneumonia and COVID-19 together is 122 rather. Regular influenza deaths are 5,886, and deaths with pneumonia, influenza, or COVID-19 altogether, 92,615. So when you put all these numbers into perspective, pneumonia deaths versus pneumonia with COVID versus COVID specific, we see a lot of different numbers than what we saw off the mainstream news for the last 3 weeks.
Oh yeah, and it's the actual numbers are totally invalidating the models, and yet people are still screaming, follow the model, follow the plan. The plan's wrong, the model's wrong. These are the numbers. We need a new model. We need a new plan. Open up the damn country.
Open up the damn country. And there's been some discussion over what some of the, I mean, these are provisional numbers. These are not the official numbers. But
Right.
once again, we're looking at two very different numbers between or within the same department, within the completely same department.
Is Worldometer from taken from the CDC or?
Yes, two different
Okay.
departments within the CDC.
I'm not surprised. Left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing. I've been involved in politics since before I was old enough to vote, and nothing surprises me anymore when it comes to the government. It's really disillusioning to come to this place. It's heartbreaking because most of us grow up. We're told to trust the government, trust the government, trust the experts, and after the experts and the government consistently lie and betray you, lie to you and betray you with their policies, it's like, how can you believe anything they say?
Well, you have to because otherwise you're evil and wrong and everything else. Everything else that
Yeah,
they try and throw at you.
yeah. I mean, that's the response, and that's how they try to shut people down, is marginalizing them.
Which do you think is more accurate at this point? Do you think one is accurate, one is the other? Do you think we're somewhere in between the two?
I wish I could say. There's so much bad data. In Philadelphia, I was reading the Philadelphia Health Department has changed their reporting methods for reporting people who are infected with COVID. They said they used to, when somebody would get tested 3 times to see if they had COVID, if they got a positive test each time, that would only count as one case. Now
Mm-hmm.
they're saying they're going to count each test as a separate case, even if it's for the same individual. And then you got New York, where they added something like 3,400 people to the death rolls for COVID, even though they did not confirm through testing to see if that those people actually had COVID and that they died of it. So I mean, we got so many examples of governments and hospitals inflating their numbers. It's hard to say what's true and what's not at this point. You can't trust the numbers, but at the same time, these CDC numbers are all we got to go by.
Well, and that's time is going to tell, I think, on this one, and they really are going to. We're going to see differences as long as we go. I mean,
Yeah,
I listened to Styx's videos this morning, and one of the things he pointed out, and that was actually the title, is all these Karens are going to be laughed at through the rest of history over their response to what's happening right now, and I see the merit in what he was saying with that. He went as
I
far
think
as
that
to saying that some of them are going to be at a point where they're going to be doing a mass scrub of their social media.
yeah, they're gonna have to. These tattletalers, these Karens, they have outed themselves as the enemy of reason, and they want to talk about how they care about their neighbor, but here they are more than willing to see their neighbor beat up and thrown in a cage than even trying to reason with them. It's like, hey, try to get, you need to be in your house. I don't know if people. My point. I just think if people want to shelter in place, shelter in place. If you're afraid of this, stay home.
Mm-hmm.
Quit bothering everybody else.
Well, you have made the call for opening the country back up, and federalism has prevailed, which, as a 10th Amendment absolutist, federalism is my middle name at this point. But we do have about 10 states now that have decided that they were ready to open up here. So, if you'll permit me, I do have a list sitting up here in front of me. So, with
Yeah.
some of the things that are going on, it appears that Alaska Effective and non urgent procedures, biopsies, and angiograms will resume Monday with defined safety protocols.
Right.
Arizona, Governor Ducey last week extended stay home, stay healthy executive order until May 15th, adjusting it to allow retail businesses to begin reopening Monday. So technically, they're still not open, but they're letting businesses open up a little bit at a time in Arizona here. Arkansas, gyms and fitness centers may begin to resume operations Monday, but they must screen and all staff members on entry. Then they've got social distancing stuff. There was no Arkansas never had a stay-at-home order, but they had a suggestion.
Right.
Colorado is saying non-critical commercial businesses may allow up to 50% of their employees to conduct in-person work. That takes place outside of a private residence, so they're on limited capacity. Florida has banned Florida Man from running around and causing havoc in the state, but they are on a phase one of a state safe, smart, step-by-step plan. So counties except Broward, Miami-Dade, and Palm Beach will begin reopening. Retail shops, museums, libraries can open at 25% capacity. Restaurants can reopen outdoor seating with tables 6 feet apart. Indoor capacity is reduced to 25%. And they're allowed to have elective surgeries again. Kansas, all businesses not prohibited may open if they can maintain 6 feet of distance between consumers. Businesses that cannot avoid close contact, like hair salons and tattoo parlors, will remain closed. It's a fairly reasonable one, I think. Minnesota. Tim Walz will allow retail businesses and other non-critical businesses to begin curbside pickup with restrictions. Employees should continue wearing PPE. Missouri, show me strong recovery. Retail shops can reopen at reduced customer capacity. Restaurants will resume dine-in services with limits, including sitting no more than 10 at a table. Montana. Bars, breweries, distilleries will begin providing some in-establishment services Monday. Steve Bullock gave the retailers the green light to reopen and allowed churchgoers to attend services. Thank God. First Amendment can resume. Nebraska, some restaurants, beauty and nail salons, barbershops, and tattoo parlors can open with a 10-person limit. Restaurants, 50% capacity. New Hampshire, stay-at-home orders modified and healthcare services can resume. Ohio, manufacturing, distribution, construction will begin opening back up Monday, along with general offices. So you can get your whatever it's Dunder Mifflin paper out of Ohio again. Mike DeWine is allowing medical procedures as well. South Carolina has lifted the work or home order, and you can start going out to some restaurants. And once again, that's an outdoor only thing, which is, I think that's a good thing for South Carolina. It's pretty warm down there, from what I understand. Vermont is crews of 10 or fewer workers can resume outdoor work, including construction at unoccupied sites. And they still have the stay home, stay safe order until May 15th. And finally, West Virginia, small businesses, 10 employees or less, can reopen, along with pet groomers, barbershops, and hair and nail salons. Restaurants could resume outdoor dining and takeout. Elective medical procedures were also allowed to resume. So, if you're in one of those states, you're getting to be out into the clear, which is good for you guys. Of course, we are still under the lockdown, but nobody cares in our state at this point. Only the most ardent Democrats are the only ones that care about what our governor said in this state. What do you think about this list here?
I mean, it is what it is. The states are reopening, but the problem here is, they're picking winners and losers. They're having some companies open, being able to resume business, so maybe they can possibly stay afloat, while others are still being either forced to close or reduce work at a reduced capacity to where they might not be able to still be able to make their financial obligations, utility, mortgage, rent, whatever kind of expenses they have. But it also ignores the fact that the economy is so interconnected, and you can't just open up parts of it. even if you do it at reduced capacity, you've got to let the whole thing open up.
Hmm. Oh, absolutely. And it comes down to a freedom part of it too. Wisconsin does not have a mask requirement. Some counties do, some counties don't. But I went to a Menards that was different than my usual Menards. That's Menards is a big box home improvement store,
Yeah.
like a Lowe's or a Home Depot, but it's local to the area. I think it's just Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Illinois are the only ones that have them, if I'm not mistaken. So I went there just because I'm starting a garden this year. I went to go get some seeds and some dirt to because I can't. I rent. I can't till up the yard, and I think that would violate my lease if I did. But I've been doing a pot garden, not weed garden, but I've been using milk jugs as planters. The Menards that I went to, not the normal one that I go to, does well. All of them now do. I found out today require a mask indoors, even though the county that I was in does not require them. On a
And see,
business perspective, I can get along with that as long as it's not being mandated by the government.
yeah, yeah, companies have a right to dictate how you do business with them. It's a matter of freedom of association, as long as they're not using the force of government to get you to follow through. If
Hmm.
Menards or Costco want you to wear a mask when you go into their store, if you want to shop there, you need to follow their rules.
Well, that's just it. If I didn't believe in the mask thing, I would have walked right back out the door.
Yeah, it's not like you can't go somewhere else.
Hmm. I mean, there wasn't any. Well, I got to think about the town. I think there's a Home Depot right on the other side of the interstate I could have gone to at that point. But other than that, yeah, I mean, there are options for me at that point.
Yeah, and for most people, there will be those kind of options. I definitely, matter of fact, I'm going to my local building supply store tomorrow to pick up a few things. We recently got a swing set for my daughter, and it needs some parts, and so I'm going to have to go out. And as far as I know, my local the place where I'm going, they're not going to require masks. They're not really doing nobody. I have not seen anybody in my entire county do the social distancing thing. The county's been pretty much open the whole time, regardless of lockdown orders, and even the county seats mayor is like saying, stay at home if you don't got to go. And it's like, I've been out and about because I'm an essential employee. I've been out and about. I've been, watching the traffic patterns. Aside from really at the very beginning of March, nobody's really been paying attention to it. I was at a gas station last night and it was jumping. I mean, there must have been 30 people there. Music was blaring,
Hmm.
people having a good time. It was nice, warm weather. It was people were just going about their lives because they're sick and tired of being lied to. They're sick and tired of having their financial lives, potentially ruined over something that's not nearly as dangerous as people trying to make it out to be. And then, like you said, you got people demonizing the likes of us who are trying to put the truth out there, and it's
Hmm.
just like,
Well, one of the things too I noticed, and I mean, as warm as it was yesterday, the city that I went to, which I'm not going to say obviously for doxing purposes, but the city that I went to yesterday is a massive tourist trap. On a day that it was over 70 degrees on a Sunday, that place would have been crawling with people just constantly, which for the most part it kind of was. I mean, we still had people out having the walk around the lake and everything else like that. On the surface streets and everything, it was pretty packed in the city. But what I couldn't believe was that when I went home, it's probably a 5 mile stretch on the interstate, and then a 25 mile stretch on. It's not an interstate; it's a state highway, but it's a freeway
right.
styled state highway. But usually, like I said, on a 70-degree Sunday at 6 o'clock at night, it would have been absolutely 100% packed. You wall to wall traffic. You probably would have been going at the speed limit, possibly no more. But yeah, it was just smooth sailing. There were maybe 10 cars in that 5 mile stretch that I saw.
Oh man, that was one nice thing at the very beginning of this. Because I got to go to work and everything. It's like there's nobody on the road. I could have, aside from the law enforcement making sure people don't speed.
Hmm.
But there's been almost nobody on the road, and it's just nice cruising. Turn up the tunes, go to work, get to work. do your thing, come, go back home, still cruising with the tunes up. Don't have to worry about nobody. It was nice. People in my area have no idea how to drive, even a good, so it was nice.
Oh yeah, I didn't get to experience any of that relaxed traffic there because from home to work, it's two back roads. That's all
Oh
that I'm
wow.
on.
Yeah, I live about 30 minutes from where I work, so
I don't miss that.
it's, I mean, it's still in the same county and all. And even at normal traffic, it takes me no more than half an hour to get there because traffic's never really bad.
So, speaking of work and states opening up here, we did have a major milestone come up. Yeah, what's today? The 4th? Yeah, May the 4th. So, 3 days ago, 4 days ago, we had a major milestone come up in our regular discourse of the world, and that is the fact that the next rent day had passed while people were under the lockdown here. Now, of course, we're looking at people who have missed work at this point. There are people out there that are furloughed. So there is a chance, and of course, now we're looking at the federal mandate that evictions cannot take place during this pandemic, and rent. You're not required to get your rent paid right away if you're hurting. The federal government stepped in and put a freeze to that, which I thought was the dumbest idea in the world. But
Oh yeah,
such
it's
as,
gonna.
and it's not because, of course, it's not because I know that or I want these people to struggle. I don't want them to struggle. But the fact of the matter is, and this is part of the reason that we need to talk about this right now, is the fact that once all this is over, that's all those back rent payments are going to come due, and there are a lot of people that are going to be screwed when this comes up here. But fear not, squad member and person who is the champion of poor people for whatever reason, Ilhan Omar, decided she had the solution. And that is that we once again, they're saying again that we need to cancel all rent and mortgage payments coming down from here, coming down.
Oh yeah, I was watching. I was actually watching Contemporary while I was waiting for you, and I'm just like, you got to be crazy. That is gonna. You think the housing market's bad right now? If you cancel all rent and mortgage payments, one, nobody's gonna want to be able to want to provide affordable housing, rentable housing for people, because not everybody can afford to buy a house. It's really expensive to buy a house. In some cases, though, the rent definitely is more than a mortgage payment would be. So if you're affording that kind of a rent, maybe you should be buying. But you're gonna discourage people from renting. So you're gonna have these houses go up for sale. They're gonna stay for sale because there's gonna be such a glut of them. The banks are gonna just not be able to do anything with them. Um, if the government steps in, you're going to wind up with just more housing projects, and they're not universally a good place to live. There are definitely examples of where government housing projects are really nice, but that's not a guarantee.
Hmm.
Um, so you're killing people's livelihoods. You're killing any kind of ability for them to provide housing for others. But that's all part of the left's agenda. They don't believe in landlords. They don't believe in private ownership of business. I mean,
Well,
it
one of the
just
things with the left too, and once again I'm going to go and cite Sticks Hexenhammer on this one here, on his video from this morning. He is 100% correct on this. The left, when they're trying to push this agenda right now, are assuming the fact that we're looking at these big billionaire business companies, like a company out of Chicago that comes up and buys up everything east of 14th Avenue in Kenosha, which is the oldest part of town. Anybody who's not familiar with Kenosha, which I wouldn't expect anybody to be, anybody these people come up, these investors come up from Chicago, they buy up all these properties and they take Section 8 on all of them here.
right.
That's who the people like Ilhan Omar and Bernie Sanders, that's how they're trying to paint the landlord, but they're not thinking about some of these other people out there. I've lived in places before, I've rented places before where the landlord is a tenant in the building. He bought the building, he lives in one of the units, and he rents all the rest of them out to people.
Yeah, I mean that's a I imagine that's a pretty common thing for somebody who
Mm.
just owns one building
Yeah.
that has multiple units in it. I imagine that's more common in larger municipalities than it is around where I live. Where I live, there's only 50,000 people in the whole freaking county. We got lots of wide open spaces.
Mm.
We've only actually got two apartment complexes that are actually like a tower. Everything else is single family homes and duplexes. And I don't even think we really got that much in the way of condominiums, if anything, if any. So,
Well, I mean, it's the same thing too. I mean, I know very well the people that own the building that I live in now, and they both go to work full time and overtime for the most part, outside of the fact everything that they have to do around here,
oh
and
yeah,
their own. I've been to their house too, and they've got a huge yard that they've got to take care of too. It's it's they're not living the life of luxury out of this. They've got a
oh,
basic house out in the country with a big yard out there. Plus, they've got this yard to take care of all the building maintenance here, and they both go to work full time, and they got two kids.
my best friend,
Hmm.
he actually owns some rental properties in the county that I live in, and it is not a panacea of money, and it has actually gotten to be so bad for him that he's actually wanting to sell, and nobody wants to buy because owning rental properties is very expensive. Especially if you're trying to keep them full, you can't price yourself out of whatever market you're in.
Hmm.
You've got to keep your prices low, and that might mean you have to sacrifice on some stuff. I mean, yeah, you've got to maintain the properties, you got to make repairs, but if you're barely making the mortgage payments with the rent you're charging just to keep people in the unit,
Hmm.
at some point you're just going to say the heck with it. You're going to evict everybody, and then you're just going to bulldoze everything to the ground. Because at the end of the day, you know, as much as I'd love to be able to help people, and love to see more people get into a decent living situation where they're actually living in a building and not on the street. It costs money to keep these buildings up.
Hmm.
That's what that rent is supposed to go for. I mean, yeah, you got your slumlords who just collect the money and don't do any repairs,
Yeah.
but
Well, and that's what
you
I was
can't.
talking about with the billionaire investors that come up from Chicago and do this
Yeah. Oh yeah.
in a city like Kenosha, which is right on the Wisconsin Illinois border. So they come in, they buy up a bunch of properties under Wisconsin property tax, which is by far lower than Illinois property tax, so they can actually make some money off of that, and then take Section 8 for everything. Most of these people have never met their landlords, and that is a neighborhood that I used to live in.
You used to live near Kenosha?
I lived in Kenosha,
Oh, you lived in Kenosha.
in that neighborhood, in that bad neighborhood where all those investment properties were.
Oh my goodness. I feel bad for you, man. I grew when I grew up. I'm actually originally from New Jersey, and I literally grew up in the ghetto. it's a I know what it's like. You got these basically row homes. You got these 2-story duplexes, and they're just you don't even got 5 foot of room between them.
Hmm.
For the most part, they're just right up next to each other, and it's just a horrible place to live in. Gangs, drugs, just really bad and violence. Schools are even just horrible places to be in, and it's people who don't. It's from people who don't care, and you're always going to have that.
So let's move on to something else here to talk about. Looks like Michigan has extended their lockdowns. Now, state legislatures in Michigan, GOP controlled legislature on both chambers, I should say. I was about to say both houses. But both chambers in Michigan are GOP controlled. So they are attempting both to legislatively block Governor Whitmer's orders or actually file a lawsuit to get her orders lifted at this point. There are a couple lawsuits that are going up through the courts at this point here. But that wasn't enough for some people over in Michigan. As we can see on the screen here, let me get this pulled up here. There was a protest in the Michigan State House. Now, the protesters were, under all circumstances, obeying all of the laws of Michigan, including the fact that they are allowed to open carry on government buildings as long as the guns are not intended to be used for any unlawful purpose. But as you
Right?
see on the screen, we do have one gentleman here. This is the one picture that's made its way around the rounds of everybody in the internet here
Yeah.
of a Very charming fellow screaming in the faces of the state patrol.
That's not really a good way to get your point across, especially when there are so many guns involved and tensions are so high. That's just asking for trouble. I like the guy in the gentleman with the in the yellow shirt that's behind him.
Mm-hmm.
He looks like he's engaging in a much more reasonable manner with the individual in front of him.
Mm-hmm.
And it's such a huge contrast. You got this guy in the foreground with the what looks like a pot leaf on his t-shirt is definitely badly representing everybody. And then you got this other guy in the yellow shirt, just he's just calm. He's there. He's making his presence known, making his point known just by being there. And it's an interesting. It's interesting that everybody's focusing on the pot leaf angry guy.
Well, one of the things that the verbiage that's going around with this protest here is the fact that armed militiamen stormed the Capitol, suggesting, of course, that they came in with guns blazing, pointing, shooting, and busted in the doors. But actual reporting from this incident shows that all these people came in. When they came in, they were brought in single file, temperature checked. Every one of them temperature checked when they came in, and
Right.
allowed by the guards and the state police that patrol the Capitol to come in and, for the most part, peaceably assemble. Of course, we have the screaming man here, but peacefully assemble and demand that it's the citizens' house and they should be allowed to. And of course, one of the arguments that came out of this was what would have happened if any of these people were Muslim or black as they came in, saying that, of course, everybody would have been shot if they had been.
That's complete BS. I just linked to you in the chat a picture. I don't know what year it's from, but it's shown an armed group of black individuals, probably from the '60s, because the it's saying that these are members of the Black Panther group. I don't know
Hmm.
if you remember who they are.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
and they're armed. They're standing on the steps of a government building, and it doesn't look nobody lost their minds over that. Nobody got shot. Nobody got killed. And granted, it was a different time back then, but if you want to argue that, it was actually back then. It was worse for them to do something like that than it is today.
Well, one of the things that I pointed out to is you would have to assume, first off, that the protesters would have had to protest the exact same way. Open carry, not brandishing, loaded obviously, but open carry and peaceful. But what if we learned from left wing protests out of the past few years? Think about Ferguson. Think about Rodney King, for that matter, for God's
Oh
sake.
my goodness, damn!
Think about
I'm
anything that came out of Portland or Seattle.
Yeah, I mean, you got these left leaning cities, and they got these horrible civil rights violations. It's if it wasn't so horrible, it would be funny. I
Mm-hmm.
want to laugh, and I know that's not the right response because Rodney King was horrible. What they did to Rodney King was horrible.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I remember that happening, and I was flabbergasted that the police could actually do that. I remember that specifically. It was That's really what really started waking me up. I guess maybe got me started getting me woke. Like if that's the right usage in the modern parlance to what's going on around us in the world. It started making me more aware and wanting to be more aware and to be more involved.
Well, the point that I wanted to get to when I talked to this, of course, is because it seems so far when the left protests, they destroy whatever they're protesting on. I mean, when Act 10
And
went through in
so
Wisconsin, the left and the progressives went and occupied the Capitol and caused millions of dollars worth of damage to the Capitol. We saw the riots in Ferguson. We saw obviously the Rodney Kings. We saw this Proud Boys rallies over in uh, over in Portland, or the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, where the left came back to counter protest and everything got tense and violent and everything. And then we saw both this riot here, where yes, we had the person screaming, but for the most part, there was no real danger in the air. Nobody was trying to break anything, make graffiti, or anything else. Or the big one for me is the Richmond rally, where not only did the protesters come out, all armed to the teeth, of course, but nobody got hurt, nobody got shot. as everyone thought they were going to be. And they left Richmond cleaner than when they came in. They
Yeah,
picked up all
yeah.
the litter, everything that they littered and everything that had been littered prior. They cleaned up the city after they left.
That's better than what can be said for Occupy Wall Street, for BLM protests, for Antifa uh, rallies, for lack of a better word.
Mm-hmm.
I got to say that the even if not exactly specifically liberty minded, it seems to me that conservatives and more liberty minded individuals actually, when they go to a protest, they are way more peaceful about it because they know everybody's watching them. They know everybody's already against them anyway,
Mm-hmm.
and everything they do is going to be absolutely scrutinized.
That's a good point. I never would have thought of that direction of that. That's an interesting way to think about it, of course, because yeah, the right is. I mean, when they think about a right rally, they think about the tiki torches, and that's what they try to compare all the rest of this to.
Yeah,
Which those were
they
fringe
try
individuals anyway.
they try to lump in groups like the KKK and neo Nazis, and they can lump them in, but I fully reject that. Neo Nazis and KKK have a lot against most right conservatives and liberty minded individuals.
Mm-hmm.
Matter of fact, I would probably say they're more left than right, anyways, because of the way they want to similarly use big government for their own purposes.
One of the other things that I pointed out, and I talked about this on Ed Talk over on Saturday, was the fact of the situation out there. Now, once again, the left, or at least the people who are against the protests in Michigan, because that has made some strange bedfellows. All this lockdown stuff has made some very strange bedfellows across
Yes,
the.
it has.
So I can't even say left and right anymore. But the people who were against all the protests that happened in Michigan did keep bringing up the point that if had this been people of color out there, anybody who they would have wanted named at this point, it would have been a bloodbath. As soon as they came in armed like that, the state police would have made it a bloodbath. And all I gotta say is those would be the dumbest state police in the history of all policing at this point because you've got guns everywhere in a small enclosed area because they were all indoors.
Do you? My response is, do you want to start the boog? Because
No,
that's how you're going to start the boog.
I mean, just guns everywhere, both directions. You'd see more people dead from friendly fire than from shooting back and forth at each other. Just
You
with that
probably,
many guns in that small of a confined area. And I'm
yeah,
sure the protesters knew that, and I'm sure the police knew that too.
yeah. You're definitely right about that. There would have been a lot of friendly fire casualties, and
Mm-hmm.
then there would have been the collateral damage casualties too. Just people just
Yeah.
there to view what's going on who are not armed, not necessarily for or against either side. They're just there to view. They're rubbernecking basically.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't Fallout. We don't have the spray and pray perks, so if that bullet doesn't hit where it wants to go, it's going to hit something else.
Yep, yep. That's one of that's why all these firearm training people they tell you you keep your finger off the trigger until you're sure you want to destroy what's at the other end of that barrel, and you
Mm.
always make sure not only what's in front of you but what's behind what's in front of
Yeah, it's nuts. We got to keep going, though, man. This whole COVID thing just takes up half the show every time.
you.
It's
Man,
crazy.
it's such a big thing. And it shouldn't be. It
Yeah.
really shouldn't be.
So I got a couple more things that we need to talk about as we go along here. So, first and foremost, we have some California news. California officially opened up their beaches, ready to go. The state is still on stay-at-home order, but we had scenes like this once we had one of the first night stays over in California, which, from what I can tell out of the scene for the most part, you see a lot of social distancing. I mean, yeah, we've got a couple of people in the bottom there that are gathered around a cart of some sort here, but for the most part, people are pretty spread out on this beach. And of course, yes, there was a flood out from people of Los Angeles where the beaches were still closed, going down to places like Orange County or Long Beach or other places like that. Surrounding areas, not necessarily all going around and crowding around the Los Angeles beaches. And in response this week, Gavin Newsom has said that he is going to jump up and shut down the beaches for general use.
Yeah, I was like, from the picture you've got up there, it's like that seems like a typical beach what I'm used to. When I grew up in New Jersey, I was no more than 50 miles from the shore,
Hmm.
and that's actually a little less credit than what I'm used to seeing, but even what I'm used to seeing should be perfectly okay. I mean, you're not, people who are going to the beach are typically not sick. They're not coughing, so they're not going to accidentally spread something to anybody, anyways. Everybody's going to be in this highly, this high saline solution that we know as the ocean. They're going to be swimming around. They're going to have, they're going to be pushed to and fro. They got the sun beating down on them. They got all this UV radiation. They're probably the healthiest, safest people in the whole country right there on that beach.
Hmm. But Newsom says you're not scared enough, so you must shut down. And this
Oh
goes right
yeah.
along with the skate parks thing.
Yep. Yep.
Filling in skate parks with sand. I talked with Britt about that last week, and that's hometown turf for Britt. She's
Yeah.
not too far from any of that.
Yeah. I actually watched that. I don't get to watch most of it live when it happen when you guys do that stuff, but
Hmm.
I watched it afterwards, and it's crazy. I was when I heard about those kids, I mean, shoveling out the sand or turning it into a BMX park. I was like,
Yeah, that
yeah,
was great. Have you done your civil disobedience today?
for real.
But I mean, what has got to be the point of closing? I mean, we're looking at studies after studies show that sunlight and open air is the best thing for combating this. And think about California's caseload versus New York's as we went along with this too. Yes, of course, Newsom can run out and claim that he had the lockdown and that's what did it. But
It's
people
it's
are
more of that. It's more of that, spreading that FUD, the fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And the more they can spread it, and the more they can get people dependent on government, the better it will be to keep people in that state later on. The better for them, anyways.
So, did you see this news story about the police that were hassling the elderly couple that were using chairs on the beach?
I didn't. I did not actually. I didn't know that they were hassling an elderly couple. It's just like every time I hear something about the police here lately, it's like, can they go any lower? And then they tell now hassling an elderly couple. Are you kidding me?
So, I didn't get. Let me see if I can find the news story here that goes with this. I believe it was. Yeah, it was. It was a couple that were 88 and 90 years old. They were out on the beach. They sat on chairs, and the police came up and told them that they had to disperse because they were sitting out on chairs. Now, the reasoning the police that gave them for dispersal was the fact that they were allowed to go onto the beach. The beaches hadn't been closed yet at that point. They were allowed to go on the beach, but they had to sit in the sand. Chairs meant that it was a permanent fixture.
What? Are you serious? Wow. I did not know about that. That is ridiculous. That's as good as the police. I think it was in New York, hassling this married couple in the park because they weren't social distancing. And even after the couple told them, "Hey, we're married, we live in the same house," the police were like, "I don't care. You've got to stand 6 feet apart." Like, there's no sense to any of these orders. There's no use of logic or reason. It's obey, obey, obey. That's all it's about is conditioning people to be more willing to obey for when the next crisis comes along.
So, the next piece of news that I have here, let me change up the scene here. The next piece of news that I had that I wanted to go over was the fact that remdesivir has appeared to be approved for emergency use for treating COVID 19 cases. Remdesivir, of course, has been talked about numerous times as we go along here. Citing from BuzzFeed News, the FDA has approved the experimental drug remdesivir for emergency use to treat COVID 19 on Friday, just days after a preliminary study reported it shortened hospital stays for COVID 19 patients. In
Is
an
this
emergency use authorization statement, the FDA's chief scientist, Denise Hinton, concluded it's reasonable to believe that the known and potential benefits of remdesivir outweigh the known and potential risks of the drug for the treatment of patients hospitalized with severe COVID 19. Go ahead, you had something to say on that one?
Yeah, I was
Oh,
gonna say, is this the same remdesivir that Dr. Fauci has financial interest in?
I did not know that he had financial interest in that. That's
Yeah,
interesting.
he's from what I was reading, he actually um, he either has interest in the financial interest in the drug itself or the company that's manufacturing it because it's still one of those patent controlled non-generics.
Mhm.
And from what I'm reading, from what I've read, remdesivir is helpful if you've already been hospitalized and on a on a ventilator. It actually will shorten your stay by like up to 5 days.
Well, anything helps at this point here. I'm not going to
Yeah,
lie.
yeah. I'm
It's
not gonna lie, that's fine, but this is only effective after you've shown severe symptoms. You got the crud in the lungs, and you're coughing. You're on a ventilator. This is that's the only point where it's useful for treating COVID-19. And at that point, you're not actually treating the virus; you're treating the symptoms.
well, that's what
Where
chloroquine was too. It was never a cure for the coronavirus. It was
no,
something to ease off the symptoms so people could live and breathe as they went along.
actually, hydroxychloroquine quinine with azithromycin and zinc. What it did is that the zinc allowed the drug to get into the cell and actually slow down the replication of the virus. So it actually affected the spread of the virus inside somebody's body, allowing the immune system to ramp up its response and take care of it on its own.
Right. Slow the spread, slow down the symptoms because it's the spread that's causing your body to react and have the symptoms.
Exactly. So if you start treating early enough with the hydroxychloroquine and the azithromycin zinc, uh, combo, then you'll never theoretically, all other things being equal, you'll never get to the point where you actually need to use the remdesivir. But the government is still blocking the use of hydrochlor. I can't say that again. They're blocking the use of that drug combo, but they're pushing this one, which is only effective at the end stages of the disease. I
One of
can't
the
I can't I can't believe that there's not a financial interest in there from on Dr. Fauci's part for this for the reasoning for not allowing at least both of them to be used at their proper times.
Well, it's not surprising, of course, either, because Gilead Sciences has been seeing major. I mean, I read the stocks every morning. Gilead Sciences builds every single day as the FDA goes through and approves more and more for this. So, I mean, I'm not complaining about it. Of course, if he wants to get in and get on it, if he's confident enough in Gilead Sciences that he wants to put their money behind him, I can't fault him for that. I would do the same thing. And he's a
It's
government agent, or government agent, obviously, but
it's a conflict of interest though. Here he is, he's promoting remdesivir while he's demonizing this other drug, which would be better to use because it catches, you use it at the beginning stages of an infection in a person versus waiting until they're so severe that they got to be put on a ventilator. I'm suspicious of motives. Normally I was like, okay, if it was you who had a financial interest in seeing remdesivir use, I wouldn't question your motives as much as I would Dr. Fauci's because you're not in a position to recommend one drug over the other and have that be the policy for the whole entire country.
so I got a couple more here that I want to go over before we get out of here. Of
Okay.
course, I want to talk about De Blasio because he made an ass out of himself more than usual. So, reading from CNN, the ADL and a New York City councilman are calling out Mayor Bill de Blasio after he condemned a large
The New
funeral
York City
gathering,
Police
saying,
Department
"Oh,
dispersed
I got
this huge
I
crowd.
got a video playing. I apologize for that. Go away, CNN. Nobody likes you."
Communist News Network.
after he condemned a large funeral gathering, saying he targeted the entire Jewish community when only one group of people broke the rules. De Blasio said that the gathering for the rabbi's funeral Tuesday in Williamsburg, New York, was absolutely unacceptable and noted that it won't be tolerated. Something absolutely
Oh,
unacceptable happened in Williamsburg tonight, a large funeral gathering in the middle of this pandemic, de Blasio tweeted. When I heard, I went there to myself to ensure the crowd was dispersed, and what I saw will not be tolerated so long as we are fighting the coronavirus. And this is where it got bad. My message to the Jewish community and all communities is this simple. The time for warnings has passed. De Blasio said in another tweet. I have instructed the NYPD to proceed immediately to summons or even arrest those who gather in large groups. This is about stopping the disease and saving lives, period.
man. Keeping people from gathering for a funeral, people who are old enough to understand and know the risk involved, who still want to take that risk so they can honor their former fellow and their death rights. Man, it's just I was arguing with somebody on Twitter for almost 12 hours about this. It was like, the level of nonsensical response to this is crazy. It's like these people know the risk. They're following the news just like you and I.
Mm-hmm.
They're intelligent individuals. If they decide that the risk for going to the funeral is okay for them and for those around them,
Mm-hmm.
then let them. They're not hurting you. They're not hurting me. They're not hurting, grandma down in the boarding home. They're going. They're seeing off their their friend, somebody from their community, and you're telling them they can't do that, and it's unacceptable. It's disgusting.
Well, and the biggest problem with this, of course, was the fact, and this goes along with something else that De Blasio was talking about, and Cuomo was talking about as well, is the fact that they said outright that there were going to be, we needed to make sure that Christian services and temple were interrupted. They specifically called out Jewish religion and Christian religion earlier on in the month. They didn't say a word about Muslims.
Oh yeah, because it's racist to say anything against the Muslims.
Yeah.
It's the truth. I hate it. I hate it. I don't have anything against anybody who's Islamic, who follows that religion. When I worked, I used to live in Knoxville, and I worked at a restaurant there. And one of my coworkers was Muslim. He was a great guy, nice, friendly person. All he wanted was for everybody to get along. He was such a cool dude, and you know, but if you're gonna treat two groups one way and not the third group, not some third group when they're the same type of group, and you're gonna say these two groups can't get together to do their worship, but this group can. There's something wrong. Either what's good for the goose is good for the gander, you know.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, and that's been the biggest problem with this. It wasn't the fact that yes, he was breaking them up. I mean, it's the federalist in me that says he has the right to figure out what's going to work best for the community. It's the fact that he went and specifically targeted
Yeah,
an Orthodox funeral.
yeah. I mean, from the 10th Amendment point of view, the state does have the right to decide that, but De Blasio isn't the state.
No,
Uh,
he's even more local than that.
yeah, he's the mayor of a city. He comes under state jurisdiction. The state limits the powers of the cities. As far as the Constitution is concerned, there is no such thing as a city or a county.
Mm-hmm.
There's the federal government, there's the state government, and the federal government, and that's it.
Well, right,
So
but from the constitutionality of it, it gives the authority to the states to decide what level of federalism they do within their borders, whether it
yeah,
is the
yeah,
city or the county.
yeah. If they allow that kind of leeway for their mayors to go around and doing that and say that you can act on behalf of the state to do this for us, that's one thing. Now, I don't know New York State Constitution. Unfortunately, I hate to say it, I don't know my state's constitution too well. The document is friggin' ginormous. And but I would be hard pressed to say that the state would give that kind of power to a mayor, even one as even one in a city as populous as New York City, which honestly on population alone, it's large enough to be its own state.
Right. Well, they've had talks about that.
They need to do it. They need to do it. That's a topic for a different podcast, maybe.
I got one last one here, and then we have to turn around and pay attention to our horribly neglected live chat here. This
Oh, no.
is from Fox News. Police
Okay.
investigating a case of Arizona man who died after ingesting fish tank cleaner. Police are investigating the death of an Arizona man who died last month after he and his wife drank a cocktail of soda and the drug chloroquine phosphate. It's not a drug, it's actually an industrial solvent, in a
Yeah.
supposed effort to fight the coronavirus. The Arizona couple, Wanda and Gary Lenius, required immediate hospital assistance within 30 minutes of ingesting the drug, which is an ingredient found in fish tank cleaner. The US FDA warned Friday that chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine should not be used outside of a hospital or clinical setting, and that should be the same with any Schedule 1 drug. Wanda was able to throw out much of the drug, but Gary couldn't be resuscitated, said Dr. Daniel Brooks, Banner Poison and Drug Information Medical Director. Wanda, 61, told NBC that she and her husband ingested the fish tank cleaner after hearing President Trump talk about the possible benefits of chloroquine to fend off the virus. But they are in there at this point now and investigating her for murder. Because it turns out that she was not some rabid Trump fan, some rabid MAGA fan. She was, in fact, very sympathetic to a lot of left wing causes, and there were a lot of problems in that marriage. I think we're
Oh,
sitting on Carol Baskin 2.0 here. What do you think?
I don't know who Carol Baskin is, so
That bitch killed her husband.
there's been a lot of women who killed their husband, and probably a lot of husbands who probably deserved it.
Have you at least heard of Tiger King?
Yeah, I've heard of Tiger King.
Apparently, and I've never watched it either, but apparently it's a documentary about murder investigation involving the Tiger King, and most of the world is convinced that it was the woman's or the man's wife that killed him, not the Tiger King.
Hmm. Well,
That's where that
that's
meme comes from.
okay. I'm definitely gonna have to look that one up. I can't promise you I'm gonna watch the show. I've seen pictures of the guy, and I'm just like, this looks too stupid. But I'll definitely look up the information behind it, though. That sounds interesting. But if I mean, if she did murder her husband, if she did induce him to ingest it, knowing that it would have such a that it would kill him, then by all means, you know, take care of her. That's you know, unless he was actively abusing her, there's no
Mhm.
call for that.
Well, I guess from what I've read from other articles that are surrounding this, it was actually the other way around. She was actually abusing him. Now, of course, most of that is hearsay at this point, but
The spousal abuse does happen in that direction,
mhm.
where it's the female spouse abusing the male spouse. And it happens, from what I understand, it happens a lot more often because most men do not want to admit that they're being abused by their wives.
Mhm.
I mean, it is totally possible that he's just a sad sap who married the wrong woman.
Well, and Ron actually had a good one here, and we'll be checking in with the live chat here in a bit. But I just got one note from Helton over here in the live chat. It says, "Of course she murdered him. That's peak DDS. She actually thought because Orange Man is bad that she would get away with it."
Yeah, I've actually been reading the chat on Twitch.
Yeah, so I've got the restream bot up here. I just kind of glance at it as we go along here. I'm
But
reading your
yeah,
chat. Don't worry, guys. But yeah, we'll get that read out here. What do you think? Do you think it's time? Well, you've kind of made your opinions known on whether to open up, but do you think most of us are ready to at this point?
I looking at the protests going on all across the country, people flooding the beaches or flooding, they're heading to their state capitals, they're making their presence known, and it's happening all across the country. It's not just these isolated incidences. The last images I saw protest out in Santa Monica had thousands of people out on the street,
Hmm.
thousands of people, and they definitely were not. They were not adhering to social distancing except for maybe the police. They were keeping clear of the cops, but they were, I mean, just tens of thousands of people just bunched up together saying, "Let us go back to work. Let us go on with our lives. You've lied to us. We're calling you out on it. Just stop. Open up the country. Let people go back to work." The whole point of the lockdown in the first place was to keep the hospitals from being overrun. We're seeing now that the hospitals are not going to be overrun. The CDC numbers and probably even the Worldometer numbers are showing that the deaths from this disease are going down. I would imagine that the infection rates are going down. Yes, Georgia has seen a spike. I was reading earlier, Georgia saw a spike of 1,000 new cases in 24 hours since they opened up. And I wonder if that's because part of them opening up was also increased testing.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no telling if these people were previously infected and they're just showing antibodies, or they're at the end, they're asymptomatic carriers. There's none of that information coming out. All we know is that there's 1,000 more, but apparently there's not 1,000 more deaths. There's
Mm-hmm.
not 1,000 more hospitalizations. Let people go back to work. Let them go back their lives. 1957 H2N2 hit the country,
Mm-hmm.
had over 100,000 deaths. We didn't shut down then. 68, 67, Woodstock's going on. H2N3 sweeps the country. Several 100,000 people died, but still, none of this crazy, insane lockdown garbage. People, the medical community said, be a little more studious in your cleaning, wash your hands. People went about their lives, and there was no widespread people dying in the streets, doom and gloom. And if what I'm reading is that these viruses were worse than COVID-19, we've got absolutely nothing to worry about ending the lockdown.
All right. Well, let's check in with the live chat here and see what they've got to say. Harvey McLeod says, I'm horrified by the amount of bootlickers that are blindly accepting these things. Apparently, her husband's friend said he was terrible for supporting those Huntington Beach protesters and went on a tirade about he and his parents and grandparents are at risk and that he should think about them and demanded that we tag all his family members so they can all see how little he cares about their health. Yeah, starting to bring the family into this too is just, it's disgusting. My parents and I don't see eye to eye on politics, but we're completely almost different ends of the spectrum at this point, but we can still get along and we can still have the discussion at this point, but using them as leverage is just, and okay, she went on there. It was the most disgusting thing I read, using family as leverage to dare question this nonsense. Ron Helton says it is immoral to make healthy people stay at home. A lot of tyrants have been exposed during this crisis. I will be campaigning hard to make sure our county sheriff is not reelected. Shazir is in here and has a very interesting sticker. We try to be as family friendly as possible, so I'm not going to describe it, but it's interesting. I almost can't take my eyes away from it.
Wow. Is that on YouTube?
D Live.
I'm on D11. I'm not seeing all that. I see.
Oh, you can't see the sticker? It's there.
Okay.
Harvey says if you're at risk or live with somebody at risk, stay home. Stop making the world cater for you and your health.
Oh,
We got stickers in here again. It really sickens me that thinking your right to go outside and to work is considered you want all of us to die to some. COVID isn't a freaking death sentence to healthy people. That's the thing too that I've been noticing is that all the people on the left think that getting COVID is an automatic death sentence, and that means that like as soon as you get a positive diagnosis, it's like the Ring. You've got 7 days left to live.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the feeling I'm getting from the people, from these people. It's like, and you look at, on Twitter, you got people saying, "Oh, if you're going to go outside, then you need to sign this waiver for medical treatment," as if wanting to go about living your life like a normal human being somehow disqualifies you from receiving medical treatment.
Sergeant Peterson says Arizona streets are very busy. That's very good. Let's see. Harvey says the funniest thing is that the newly reported numbers on deaths are less than half. But the new low numbers of deaths are still too high. Harvey says, I did hear that Rodney King was resisting arrest, but when I saw the tape, I was like, I don't know. That looks like a leering cat. I don't know my Twitch emojis, unfortunately.
That's the scaredy cat emoji.
Oh, okay. It was a case of don't question my authority, says Ron.
Yep, pretty much.
Ron says, I don't see how it's morally possible to be in a government uniform and claim with a straight face that you're protecting the individual liberties. Apparently, Newsom just extended the shelter in place through the rest of May. He doesn't want to admit that he's wrong. That's a good thing.
Yeah, no politician wants to admit they're wrong, because then they would be expected to, it's like, if we were wrong, we're gonna have to come up with the right answer, and they know they don't have a right answer because there is no right answer.
Harvey McLeod says de Blasio is an anti-Semite confirmed. I hope his opposition runs on that. Ron Helton, who's more anarchist than I am, says local, state, federal is all tyranny. None of them are consent to imprison healthy people, destroy their livelihoods, imperil their liberty. I get that. We read the Ron Helton one here. Looks like the last two that we'll read, or last one we'll read right now before we get into topics again, will be from Harvey McLeod. A lot of people said that all the protesters at Huntington are good because there will be a lot less GOP voters. Yeah, I've been hearing that too, which once again, that goes along with the idea that everything, as soon as you get COVID, it's a death sentence, 7 days.
Oh, yeah.
And then the girl from The Ring will crawl out of the TV and kill you. All right. Let's go on to the next topic. We will circle back after the next topic and catch back up with chat again. So thanks everybody who was chatting in there. So the next thing, of course, that I want to talk about is Tara Reade allegations have seemed to intensify a little bit. And I think before we get into anything else on this, I think we're going to watch this video from Tara Reade.
Okay.
Or not from Tara Reade, but from Mika and Joe. No, not the cool Joe. From Mika Brzezinski and Joe Biden sitting here talking back and forth with each other. Let me get that queued up. So one thing I hate about studio mode is it kicks me back out of the scene that I'm in, so I can't go in and start the video playing right away. All right, here we go. Let's listen to what they had to say.
Okay, let's bring in the apparent Democratic nominee for president, former Vice President Joe Biden. Mr. Vice President, thank you for coming on the show this morning. We have...
Okay, hold on a sec, because we're not going to do 18 minutes of this here. I put the wrong video up when I put everything up here. So we're going to have audio only on this, unfortunately. Let me get the video I edited queued up, because we're not going to sit here for 20 minutes and listen to Mika Brzezinski talk. I realized my error on that one. I apologize.
That's okay. It sounds good to me. I don't want to listen to 20 minutes of her and Joe Biden speak either. So.
All right, so this is going to be audio only. I apologize, people.
So the former Senate aide accuses you of sexual assault. And please, to our viewers, please excuse the graphic nature of this, but I want to make sure that there is no question as to what we're talking about. She says in 1993, Mr. Vice President, that you pinned her against the wall and reached under her clothing and penetrated her with your fingers. Would you please go on the record with the American people? Did you sexually assault Tara Reade?
No, it is not true. I'm saying unequivocally, it never happened. And it didn't. It never happened.
In the past 30 minutes or so, you released a statement on Medium, and among other things, you write this: there's only one place a complaint of this kind could be, the National Archives. I am requesting that the Secretary of State of the Senate ask the archives to identify any record of the complaint she alleges she filed. If there was any such complaint, the record will be there. Are you preparing us for a complaint that might be revealed in some way? Are you confident there is nothing?
I'm confident there's nothing. No one ever brought it to the attention of me 27 years ago. This is any assertion at all. No one that I'm aware of in my campaign at, my Senate office at the time is aware of any such request and or any such complaint. And so I'm not worried about it at all. If there is a complaint, that's where it would be. That's where it would be filed.
The New York Times has investigated this exhaustively. They didn't find any of your former staff members were able to corroborate the details of this allegation. She did file a police report a few weeks ago with the D.C. police. But since you want to set the record straight, why limit this only to Tara Reade? Why not release any complaints that had been made against you during your Senate career?
I'm prepared to do that. The best of my knowledge, there's been no complaints made against me in terms of my Senate career, in terms of my office and anything that's been run.
You were unequivocal, Mr. Vice President, back in 2018 during the Kavanaugh controversy and hearings. And you said that women should be believed. You said this: for a woman to come forward in the glaring lights of focus nationally, you've got to start off with the presumption that at least the essence of what she is talking about is real. Whether or not she forgets the facts, whether or not it's been made worse or better over time. She's going to be going on national television on Sunday. Tara Reade is coming forward in the glaring lights. To use your words, should we not start off with the presumption that the essence of what she's talking about is real? She says you sexually assaulted her.
Look, from the very beginning, I've said believing women means taking the woman's claims seriously when she steps forward and then vet it, look into it. That's true in this case as well. Women have a right to be heard, and the press should rigorously investigate claims they make. I'll always uphold that principle. But in the end, in every case, the truth is what matters. And in this case, the truth is the claims are false.
Your Senate documents at the University of Delaware were supposed to go public, and then they were resealed. The access was changed. I know that you're saying any HR complaints could be in the National Archives, but why not reveal your Senate documents that are being held in Delaware? I know there's 1,800 plus boxes, but if she believes and she alleges that the complaints may be hidden there, why not strive for complete transparency? Why was the access to those documents sealed up when they were supposed to be revealed?
Well, they weren't supposed to be revealed. I gave them the university. The university said it's going to take them time to go through all the boxes. They said it wouldn't be, and that wouldn't be before 2020 that occurred, or 2021. I can't remember the year they said. But look, a record like this can only be one place. It would not be at the University of Delaware. My archives do not contain personal files. My archives contain documents, and when I say personal, personnel files. They don't contain any personnel files. They are public records, my speeches, my papers, my position papers. And if that document existed, it would be stored in the National Archives, where documents from the office she claims to have filed her complaint with are stored.
Right, but there are claims and concerns and reports in Business Insider, and she claims that possibly a complaint or some sort of record of this might be at the University of Delaware. So, for complete transparency, why not push for the release of any documents with Tara Reade's name on them, whether it's at the University of Delaware or the National Archives?
First of all, let's get this straight. There are no personnel documents. You can't do that. You wouldn't, for example, if you worked with me or I worked for you and you had my income tax returns, you had my whatever. They're private documents. They're not for they don't get put out in the public. So they're not part of the public record that in fact is that any senator or vice president or president has in their documents. Look, there was one place that she could file the complaint.
But, Mr. Vice President, as it pertained to Dr. Ford, everyone wanted, high-level Democrats said she should be believed, that they believed it happened. You said if someone like Dr. Ford were to come out, the essence of what she is saying has to be believed, has to be real.
No.
Why?
And no, what I said, it has to be.
Why is it real for Dr. Ford, but not for Tara Reid?
Because the facts are that, look, I'm not suggesting she had no right to come forward. And I'm not saying any woman, they should come forward. They should be heard. And then it should be investigated. It should be investigated. And if there's anything that is consistent with what's being said, and she makes the case or the case is made, then it should be believed. But ultimately, the truth matters. The truth matters.
So the first thing that I want to say about this, of course, is the fact that it's amazing that Mika Brzezinski has finally done some journalism in her life. Oh, you're just catching the end of it right now.
Yeah. Okay, so all right, go ahead. I'm listening.
So it's amazing to me at this point, looking at this, that Mika Brzezinski has finally decided that she's going to do some journalism in her life. Not journalisming like Jim Acosta does. Jim Acosta comes in and journalism's all over everything.
Right.
But I mean, there's so much to unpack here. Do you wanna start on anything specific on this one?
It's not necessarily in what these two said. I've actually been following these allegations since I first heard about them. What's telling for me is Biden says he doesn't recall this ever happening. He doesn't emphatically outright deny it ever happened. He just it comes across as he doesn't recall it happening. He doesn't. He mumbles through the response though, and I don't know if that's maybe from something else going on with him. There's a lot of talk about his mental capacity, and I don't want to get into that. I don't want to disparage the man. I don't know him that well. What's telling is that Lisa Bloom, who has represented the Me Too, pretty much represented the Me Too movement, she was like, Tara, I believe you. I believe this happened, but because Biden's gone against Trump, I've still got to go Biden. I don't know the veracity of Tara's claims. If they're true, then he needs to, they need to go through the investigative process, through the criminal justice process, and if they're true, then he needs to be punished, and not just a slap on the wrists. Actually punished.
Well, he can't be punished because the statute of limitations has run out on it already.
No. What I understand, and I could be wrong, and feel free to correct me afterwards or right now if you do know for sure better, but as I understand it, the statute of limitations, the clock on that only starts after charges are filed.
That is incorrect. On that particular case, you do have a certain limited amount of time. I think it's a pretty extended amount of time. I believe it is 10 years, but no, that is from the incident. It's not from the police filing.
Okay. All right. So, well, I mean, then if the statute of limits has been exceeded, then that will, when it gets to the DA's office, they're going to say this happened, 30 years ago? Almost 30 years ago now?
Yeah, 27 years ago.
You're out of luck.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of this is coming forward. It's character identification more than looking to put somebody in prison out of this. And I do believe that there's a case of this. There are some cases to this I can see where she may be actually trying to prop Biden up, because now he can come out and say, well, I turned over all my records, and all that Kavanaugh gave was a couple of cool calendars. I know that's been discussed on some things. Or the other side of it is trying to destroy the Biden character for whatever purpose that somebody wants to destroy it for.
It's not like Trump can't beat Biden anyways.
Right.
So to come out and do this and to try to prop him up, she's going to wind up destroying her own reputation in the process, and that's a big move. I mean, if you're willing to destroy your own reputation and credibility just to see your guy get elected, that goes beyond Trump derangement syndrome. It really does.
Well, one of the things that goes along with this as well, and Mika hit this right on, that's what amazed me about this interview is she was so hard on Biden. She was so right on point with everything else. Was the fact that, I mean, Biden's got a huge number of records that are sealed up in the University of Delaware.
Right.
And of course, the question is why doesn't he release those out? Why doesn't he bring those out into the open? Which I don't know if there's going to be anything else from Tara Reade in these documents. I have no idea. Nobody knows except for other than the University of Delaware and Joe Biden himself. And it's questionable whether Joe Biden knows about it or not because he doesn't know what he had for breakfast.
Right.
He's got Alzheimer's, and people need to understand that. But the problem with this, of course, and getting all of this recorded is the fact that he said, yes, these documents in the University of Delaware have speeches, they have policy positions, they have policy points, they have memos, they have inner office. They've got all these things that show where Joe Biden has stood on issues over the years. Yep. So whether or not Tara Reade is in this or not, think about the era that Joe Biden started politicking in the 70s, in the late, or even in the early 70s. I mean, Kamala Harris wasn't completely lying when she said that he has a history of working with racists in the Senate at which point, because it was a different time. He could get away with different things and that's the other thing you have to think about, where he stood on Rodney King, for example. We talked about that earlier. Race relations, gay marriage, anything else that he has had in the past that is not going to fit with the progressive agenda, because the progressive agenda right now is a more recent creation of the Democratic Party.
It is. It definitely is. And his position papers do come to light like that. And they should be a matter of public record anyway. They shouldn't be sealed away in a box. They should have been. I understand back then they didn't have the technology to do it, but now that we do, people need to start digitizing those public records and making them widely available. This could be an instance of character assassination, but again, I don't think it's necessary at all.
Mm-hmm.
If anything, it's going to probably be to prop him up, like you were saying before. It's going to try to prop him up so he has a chance of beating Trump, which I don't think he does have a chance. As much as I dislike Trump, I just don't see Biden being the man. If he is the man, I've heard that he'll get into office, he'll have his VP with him. And his VP is most likely going to be a woman.
Mm-hmm.
He'll get into office, he'll take the oath of office, and then he's going to resign.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that could be the play, because the Democrats are so desperate to get a woman in office because all they care about is identity politics.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the other things that's gone along with this, too, of course, Stacey Abrams has come in and put her full support behind Biden, and the hashtag I Believe Biden is going around Twitter at this point. Because, it is a complete reversal from what they did with Kavanaugh.
Yeah, it is. They destroyed Kavanaugh, and for all that we saw, there was less evidence for Kavanaugh, for the accusations against Kavanaugh, than there are for the accusations against Biden.
And to be fair, I don't really care about either allegation because it was over 20 years ago. The statute of limitations you can't do anything with it at this point.
It's tragic if it did happen, and I'm sorry, but not only is the statute of limitations over, the timing of it is so perfect. Mm-hmm. It is just it's a smear campaign.
Well, the other thing that goes along with this, of course, to think about what happened here and think about the timing of this didn't come out until after Joe Biden was the presumptive nominee at this point. And he'd already been vice president for 2 years. And a lot of people are pointing this out. One of the other things that we can look at when we look at this, of course, is the idea that this can be used as a sort of a method to say that Joe isn't fit for office as we get up to the DNC, and therefore use the power of the superdelegate system and whatever other tricks that the DNC has up their sleeve to appoint in whoever they want to have in there, because for whatever reason, given the fact that this is coming up against Biden now, I don't think that the person that they want to have the office was running, because I don't think that they believe he or she could have won. So he's sitting in a stand-in so they can
Yeah.
pretty much sidestep democracy, and which would be
Well,
ironic in any sense of the world. And
yeah. And that's another possibility that they're going to use the super delegates or whatever trick they use to knock out was it Bernie when they put Hillary in. They'll
well,
just
that's actually not true. That's a myth. A lot of people brought up Hillary actually had delegate-wise had locked it up already
really.
by the end of it.
Okay.
When Bernie suspended his campaign, she hadn't locked it up yet, but by the time they didn't need to use the superdelegate system for Hillary, but they were holding it in backup just in case. She had the 1991 delegates.
Okay. Well, fair enough.
So yeah, I would love to see what's in those documents that are in the University of Delaware. Of course, they are not going to be released until 2 years after Joe Biden leaves public life.
Right.
But yeah, just to see what they think about the policy. I mean, it's out there. You can go find it, but to have it all in one place that they can use and that they can all sit and read at one point.
Yeah, honestly, I'd hate to see the papers for any of these career politicians. There's probably a lot of dark skeletons in those closets.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, it could easily destroy any of their any of their careers, or it might enhance them, depending. It doesn't seem. It seems like for like Feinstein, she seems untouchable in her area. It's like she can do no wrong. And I gotta. Hey, come here. Okay, well, sorry, had to have a visitor again.
Let's talk about the polling. So this past week, an individual Gallup poll, showed Trump's approval at 49%. Now, of course, we can't use single polls in anything as we sit out here, and the aggregate actually dropped just a little bit, putting him back to his long-term floor of 44%. But of course, everybody that's in the MAGA camp jumped up and said, "Well, he's at 49% and his disapproval is below half." Which, once again, once we go to the aggregate, it is still hovering at 51 as a disapproval rate. What did you see on this?
It's just the increase in the individual poll is probably because of how he's viewed as handling it, despite his crazy tweets. And you got to admit, President Trump has had some really crazy tweets.
Oh yeah,
but
Ben Shapiro, for all of his faults, says it best. When they bury President Trump, his tombstone's going to say 45th President of the United States, said a bunch of stuff.
The fact that the aggregate really doesn't seem to have moved much is just, I don't think that's really telling at all. It just says that people think he's doing an okay job, in my opinion. He's like, they're not any more approved, they're not disapproving or approving any more than they did in the last poll. So, depending on the timing of the polls, I don't really think that says a lot.
Well, the one that I've been paying more attention to than the polls at this point, the aggregates, is I've been watching the Vegas odds. Real Clear Politics puts those handily right up on the front page for all the polls. And while the polls are showing nationally that, and in a lot of states, that Biden beats Trump by minuscule numbers, polls always seem to hinge to the left just a little bit. Even in the aggregates, they hinge to the left. The betting odds right now are showing Trump 49.4, Biden 44.2. And Vegas hates to lose money.
Yeah, Vegas hates to lose money. I mean, if they're calling it that close, it could very well be. I don't think, in my 42 years on this planet, living in this country, I don't think I've seen this country any more divided than I have over this whole COVID-19 crisis.
Oh, absolutely. And like I said when we were talking about it, it made for some very strange bedfellows, and people are siding with each other that you wouldn't normally see siding with each other.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm hearing reports all over the place of people who are otherwise left-leaning turning to their right-leaning neighbors and saying, "Hey, how do I go buy a gun?" Or, "Hey, can I get some help with this?" And it's like that's really interesting. As far as getting back to the polling though, it could be another thing where Biden gets slims out on the popular vote,
Hmm.
but Trump still winds up with the electoral vote.
Hmm.
And of course, that'll just be another 4 years of people running illegitimate presidency.
Well, there's before I get to the three questions, there's one last thing that I do want to ask you about. This is, and I've made my opinion on this vocal, but Amash has formed an exploratory committee to explore whether he can get the Libertarian nomination and the presidency if he's got a path to do it at this point. Now, he's not officially running for president at this point, although, for
Right.
the most part, if you've formed the exploratory committee, you're pretty much filing with the FEC at that point and getting ready to do it no matter what. But he's not officially running, but he's planning on it. What do we think on this? I know what I think on this. What do you think on this?
Initially, when I heard it, my knee jerk reaction is he's just a poser.
Hmm.
He paid his money for his lifetime membership in the LP.
Hmm.
He's listed as a libertarian now on the rolls in Congress. So if you bring up the House of Representatives, where Amash sits, there's a yellow square saying "other libertarian," and
Hmm.
so it's like if he runs, and again, I hate saying this because I don't hate. I dislike politicians. I feel like they've always got an agenda. But that being said, he does have history on state level running for the LP.
Hmm.
Probably a good reason why he ran on the GOP ticket for the federal office. If he is a actual principled libertarian, and he wants to run for president, he would probably be the best choice
Hmm.
because he's already shown he can do the fundraising. He's got the support of his home state or his home district, anyways. If he has the access to the insider places. He can go to these. He's made the contacts since he's been in Congress. Going on that alone, he would be a good choice. But if he's just a wolf in sheep's clothing, I'd rather have Vermin Supreme or or Hornberger up there. I'd rather have Hornberger over Vermin Supreme because I've listened to Hornberger speak. I've listened to Vermin Supreme speak. Both good guys. They've got sound. They sound like they're good, sound, principled libertarians. But Hornberger comes across as less kooky
Hmm.
than Vermin Supreme.
Yeah, just that name and by itself will kind of throw up some of the kook flags here. My
Yeah.
problem with Amash is not his positions. It's not the fact that he's running. The only problem that I've had with Amash consistently from the beginning, from the point that he started teasing what this was, it's not necessarily don't do it. It's a don't do it this time. And I fear that he's going to get the Gary Johnson effect, and he's just going to drive the LP further away. He's going to make people see that it's just a throwaway party, and that's what he's going to show people that it is. The reason that I said that it'll be like Gary Johnson all over again. He's been in national politics as a Republican for most of his known career, and like you had brought up that he'd run as a libertarian at state level, but nobody in the country really knows him as that. They know him as the Republican politician that defected
Right.
because of the impeachment, because he didn't want to vote and get in line with the impeachment. So what they're going to see is somebody who's been a libertarian for 5 seconds that wants to run for president again.
Yeah, and that's why I knee jerk reacted with the poser. It's just
Hmm.
he just sees an opportunity to run as a libertarian, and that's it. And that's why I'm more likely, if I was somebody who voted, uh, I would be more likely to throw my support behind Jason Hornberger,
Hmm.
and because this guy has always been a libertarian. He's been he's had he's gone through the whole growth cycle of coming into those beliefs naturally, and he doesn't come off as a kook. He's
Right.
he since he's been a libertarian from the start, he's going to be seen as an actual libertarian. Not that, and I'm not trying to say Amash isn't, but it's just like you said, it's the perception. You know, Hornberger's, Amash has been a libertarian for 5 seconds. Hornberger's been one his entire life.
And the thing with Amash too, and I think it would be good for him to not run this. And I keep saying this time because I like Justin Amash. I think you do good with it, but give him 2 more cycles in the House of Representatives to see if he can hold on to that. See if the people of Michigan want him or if they want the GOP.
That's a reasonable position. I could agree with that and see the wisdom in that. If he can hold on to his seat for 2 cycles as a libertarian and not as a GOP, then we know that his supporters from his congressional district actually support him and not the party that he represents.
Yeah.
And if he's representing the libertarian principles as an individual, then he'll represent the Libertarian Party as an individual without actually having to change anything he does.
So that's where I sit on that. But before we jump out of 2020 Watch, I always ask the guests 3 questions, and I've just changed them at this point.
Oh,
Well, I've changed them since you started watching. So, or no, it was before you started watching the show that I changed them. So you're actually probably familiar with them. But we do have to talk about what's coming up here in the coming weeks, and we're still going on the assumption that the major parties are going to be the ones that get it on this one. So we're going to talk about vice presidents for the first question. So with all of the names that are circling around here, Joe Biden is going to have to pick one person as his vice president. And there are a few names out there, but logically and strategically, thinking from the Joe Biden mind and the DNC mind, who do you think Joe Biden is going to pick as the vice president?
I'll have to be honest. I don't keep up with the Democratic Party at all. I've heard some names thrown around. Kamala Harris, Stacey Abrams has apparently thrown her own name around. I don't know if anybody else is behind her, but I don't know. Biden he's going to have a lot of pressure on him to pick a woman, and he's going to have a huge pressure to pick a woman of color. So I think it'd have to probably be one of those 2.
Okay.
He won't get away with anything else, I think.
So question number 2 is, we're going to go back to the presidential side of it. Now, Biden has become the presumptive nominee, but he stood so against 27 other challengers. So if you had to pick one of those 27 to be the next president of the United States, which one do you think was the lesser of 27 evils?
Oddly, the lesser of 27 evils. I'd have to say Biden's the lesser of the 27 evils just because of his diminished capacity. He's gonna do less damage because he's not gonna be in office that long. He's gonna be forced out of office on health issues, and whoever his vice president is gonna step up.
All right, and the last question here, and then we'll go check in with the live chat again. The last question is going to be, you are now an advisor for Biden. You have to pick his vice president, and you can pick from any politician that you know of in the country. Who do you pick, and give a very brief description of why?
Any politician in the country
That you know of.
that I know of.
I don't even have to know who it is.
I would probably go with Rand Paul. Rand Paul has consistently stood on the side of liberty. I don't think he's been as staunch as his father on that. And he's definitely made a lot of people mad because of his stances. But I think I would tell Biden to go at Rand Paul. It would definitely make him a fan of the liberty loving folks, at least a little bit. That, that's who I'd pick, and that's why.
I've met people in the DNC, and you just got fired from your advisory position.
Oh, I'm sure. But if I could pick anybody, that would be
Yeah.
the man.
All right. We didn't have a lot of movement in the live chat here. Looks like Harvey McLeod said she'll crawl out of the ventilator. We were talking about the ring girl earlier. Now, it looks
Yeah.
like we got a little troll in here, too. Mustard Gunner, thanks for coming in, but I'm not going to be joining up this Discord. Sorry. And I don't
Yeah.
have a
Yeah.
robot to take care of links on DLive. Just
I'll have to take a hard pass on that as well, Mr.
yeah.
Gunner. I'm sorry, buddy.
And then Ron's got a sticker party going on again.
Yeah, I see that. I got a AOC and a Pepe, and then the Fed with JFK. I like that selection there, Ron.
Yeah.
Very, very nice.
All right. Let's talk about General Flynn. So, I've got a picture up here. So, documents were unsealed this past week in the FBI investigation into General Flynn. And included was this handwritten note that talked about numerous things, but the most important thing that this talked about, let me drop out of studio mode so I can see this, was highlighted here and is what is our goal? Truth or admission to get him to, or truth or admission or to get him to lie so we can persuade him to, or prosecute him or get him fired. I'm sorry, it's handwritten. I couldn't completely read that here.
Yeah, I see that. It's some. Boy, my wife talks about my handwriting. That's some chicken scratch right there.
And I read this typed out too, and I still couldn't catch up with it a week later at this point. So this cast a whole lot of doubt over the investigation to Flynn. Now, of course, some things have come out from this as well, that they were trying to set a perjury trap for him to try and get him to confess to violating the 1799 Logan Act, which has never been used in a criminal prosecution before. And current technology actually kind of almost makes it impossible at this point. But what have you seen on this so far? I want to get you from a fresh perspective before I start putting my opinions out on this.
I've actually not seen anything on it. Everybody on my Twitter feed has been focusing on COVID or Tara Reid allegations. General Flynn has come up a few times.
Yeah, it kind of disappeared in a hurry, didn't it?
Well, yeah. Look at Jeffrey. Look at the Jeffrey Epstein discussion. Everybody's just about forgotten about him, and I think that was that's part of what government likes to do. It likes it to distract us. But it wouldn't surprise me if Flynn was set up. He was, part of Trump's team, wasn't he?
Well, he was also he was actually being eyed up for Obama's team as well. So he's been on both sides of politics, but Obama actually advised the Trump administration not to hire him because he did have some dirt sitting up behind him. But from what it looks like and what a lot of people have talked about on this was the fact that the goal was not necessarily, they didn't think that they had anything on Flynn, but they wanted to get him to flip on Trump, essentially.
They wanted him to either flip on Trump or, from what that note sounds like, to either flip on Trump or perjure himself in such a way that it was actionable criminally. Just another way to discredit Trump is like, look at this. Trump hired this guy. He lied. He was criminally prosecuted for it. When Trump, orange man bad.
Well, I lean more towards the trying to get him to flip on Trump too, because remember they told him that he was either going to plead guilty to lying to the FBI or they were going to go and prosecute his son. That was one of the things that came out of this as well.
That's just dirty politics right there. I'm so glad that I decided to not be involved with politics. I actually came to that. I came to that. Let's see. The early 2000s. It was back when Michael Badnarik was the candidate for the Libertarian Party for president. Like that, after that whole fiasco and seeing how stuff worked at both the state and the national level, getting a first-hand look at the political process, I was like, I'm done. It's too dirty. If you've got even the littlest bit of dirt, the tiniest bit of dirt, at some point you're gonna make somebody mad, whether you meant to or not. You're gonna make somebody mad. You're gonna be seen by them as standing on the wrong side of history, not only they're going to come after you, but they're going to come after your family. It's the mafia. It's the mafia all over.
Oh, absolutely. And I made it no secret that I was actually planning on running for Wisconsin Senate in 2018, but a change in my life meant that I didn't know where I was going to be living come election day, and I figured that was more important than trying to live in D.C. for whatever godly reason anybody would want to do that.
Right.
Hi, Steven. But on top of all of that, too, I mean, I know what's going to come out about me, and I can almost document it at this point. They're going to dig up everything they can find, and there's stuff out there. I understand there are going to be people that come forward that are going to come forward with the falsehood. I fully accept that. It's
Yeah.
easily defendable at this point, but there are going to be people that come forward. I know there are.
Well, and as long as you're fully aware of that, I think I wish you the best of luck.
Hmm.
I might, if you do run a campaign, let me know, and I'll send you a donation.
Well, I'm not going to
But
take out of state donations because I'm representing Wisconsin, but
right, well, okay, well then I'll support you some other way. Then you seem like a principled enough guy. If we can, whatever we can do to limit the scope of government in our lives, it's going to be a good thing.
well, that's one of the things too. I mean, for me, it's what's barred me from the Libertarian Party is the fact that I do see them as trying to go on a top down to enact their agenda from the top down, which is a smaller government from the top down. But from that, I mean, people are going to want to have big government over the top of them. That's why I became a 10th Amendment enthusiast, was because, people can move around. California can have X amount of government, and Illinois can have X amount of government, and Wisconsin can have Y amount of government, and I don't know, someplace more anarchistic like Montana can have Z amount of government. That way
Well, I
people can
mean,
move around to the amount of government that suits their needs. There are 50 different levels of government that you can have sitting over at the top of you.
it's
May the best
funny.
man win.
It's funny that you say that because I still keep in touch with a bunch of libertarians even today,
Hmm.
and everybody's talking about take care of things at your local level. Start with your city government, start with your county government, then move up to your state government. And it seems like a bottom up approach to me. It's funny that you see it as a top down.
I do, just from the fact that, yes, they want to go to the top and say, okay, no more government, to an extent.
Yeah, the Libertarian Party is not that extreme about
Hmm.
minimizing government. They definitely fall short of returning to the original Articles of Confederation that we
Hmm.
had before the Constitution. And for me, if we were to have any sort of federal government, that would be the absolute most government I would want. Is what we had at the Articles of Confederation, mostly toothless and just there as a figurehead to help us deal with the other countries. And that's all they were. That's all they need to do.
Well, and that's kind of the platform I was looking at too. It's the platform I'm looking at is let's get the government back to standing military and interstate commerce. And if you want any more government than that, go to your state house
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
or find a state house that agrees with you. One of the two.
yeah. I mean, as long as the state governments don't close their borders, which is something they do have a right to do. They have a right to close their borders, even under the U.S. Constitution. They can actually close their borders to anybody. As long as they don't close their borders, you're free to move wherever. You want to go to California where you've got your big nanny government, go there. If you want to move to, like you said, Montana, and just have the absolute minimum state government involvement in your life, then
Hmm.
move there.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's where I see things. And, under an administration of mine, there would be no FBI because that would all be handled at a state level.
Well, I'm kind of in terms of thinking of having a federal government that regulates interstate commerce. The FBI was supposed to regulate, was supposed to not regulate, but
It was supposed
handle
to
crimes.
enforce all of that.
It was supposed to handle crimes that happened across state lines. Like,
Hmm.
say you kidnap somebody. Well, right now, at that moment that you kidnap somebody, only the state that you kidnap that person in has jurisdiction.
Hmm.
The moment you cross state lines, because of the because of the jurisdictional differences, that's where I would see the FBI legitimately moving in to handle the situation.
Well, we have U.S. Marshals for that. The most famous example being Wyatt Earp,
Right.
long preceding the FBI. We've
Right.
had that
Okay.
forever.
You don't hear much about them except for prisoner transport anymore.
Right. So I take it that we're completely off the rails at this point, and we have nothing left to say about General Flynn.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I really
That's fine. No, and I talk about it on Contemporary too, but it casts shade on these systems that so many people think that we need to have depend on us.
yeah.
And it does show. I mean, one of the things that bothered me about this entirely was the fact that General Flynn has means. President Trump has means.
Yes.
These people have means, and yet they're still going to go after them with the full force of the government. And they have the means to defend themselves from it, and they're in the government so they can work with that. What do you think that means for the rest of us when they decide that they want to have the takeover and what they're going to do with dissenters?
Oh my goodness.
They're setting an example for how much they care about the Fourth and Fifth Amendment,
Yeah.
and there's nothing defending us.
Yeah. Well, that's where the Second Amendment comes in. That's why it's so important that the right to bear arms, and not just firearms, any arms. That's what the Second Amendment was over. There's a reason why it's not the right to bear guns or the right to bear firearms. It's the right to bear arms. It's any weapon
Hmm.
you could use to defend yourself against the government that will potentially come after you. Um, and I don't want it to come to that. Personally, I'd rather see the whole government just collapse in on itself and its own hubris and leave us to pick up the pieces.
Hmm.
To go about our lives. Help out others where we can, because there's definitely going to be plenty of people who have prepped for that moment, and they're going to be ready. Uh, but there's going to be that much more who are going to need at least some instruction and help on how to get set up self-sufficiently. And I'd rather see us move to that than anything else. Even in terms of limited government, I'd just rather have none.
Hmm. All right, I think we're just going to jump into the last topic here and then head on out. We're up against the clock, and it doesn't look like the live chat is moving much anymore because everybody else in Freedom Scoop jumped online at the same time here. But let's talk about these last two here, and then we'll head on out of here. We'll go through the outro and head on out of here. So,
Okay.
sources now have shown that Kim Jong Un is alive. He's made a actual physical public appearance this weekend. Now, of course, everybody in the news has pointed out the fact that he does have a surgery scar on his wrist, but the other thing, of course, when we look at anything government, is the conspiracy theories started flying, including the fact that the person that we're seeing is a stand-in. Have you seen anything on this little bundle of joy so far?
I have. I've heard that he either went into hiding or he died from a botched heart surgery.
Hmm.
But I spent a lot of time actually listening to Michael Malice speak on this and why he thinks um, that dear leader is not dead at all, and the person that we're seeing now is actually him.
Hmm.
It's really literally a cult of personality over in North Korea. You think it's bad here with either Trump worship syndrome or Trump derangement syndrome.
Hmm.
Over there, it's a matter of life and death for those people
Oh,
that they
absolutely.
that they stay in line with the whatever the state is saying about dear leader. So is that Kim Jong Un? Probably. A body double would not get away with it for long.
Yeah.
Eventually, he would goof up, and him and his whole entire family would be dead. And then the government would still have to find a way to save face because they'll be outed in that lie. It would have been easier if he did die. It would have been easier to postpone the announcement until they could find a way to mitigate the fallout in their own country. Because their leaders are put up almost as if they're gods unto their own right, and
Right.
it's such a scary thing to hear about it. But so I think it's him. The surgery scar on his wrist, kind of weird. If he had a heart surgery, I don't know what a surgery scar on his wrist would mean. It seems kind of out of place, but I don't know what the North Korean medicine is like. So I don't think I think it's just something people are focusing on because nobody actually knows.
Yeah. And that's entirely a possibility too, as well as we look along with this. Is one of the things that was always funny to me too was, I mean, the U.S. media was so convinced that Kim Jong Un was dead to the point that the reporters were coming out and saying things like, "Well, how does it feel that North Korea is going to have a female president before the U.S. does?"
Oh my god! Oh, that was the best. That was actually the best part of it. Is just seeing all these unaware midwits propping up his sister as if her being the first female leader of North Korea was going to be a good thing when by all accounts she's just as brutal as her brother.
Possibly even worse at some point.
Yeah, yeah. It's like you think Hillary is scary if you had info that would get her lead to her arrest. This woman puts her to shame. By the way, I don't have any such information. Just to let you know.
Well, and that's going to be a thing too. Of course, now he is back and he is the supreme leader, and everything's hunky dory, and we're not going to see him again, but we'll see her all around the place. But I don't know. It's just the willingness to run with something like this so quickly and so eagerly, and I
I
lose my
don't know.
trust in the media at this point.
I lost my trust in them almost 10 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much left, but just little shit like that just moves it a little bit more into the point of, well, we need more of this.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, and the last story that I have on the stack today is we're going to read from foreignpolicy.com. As if things aren't bad enough, Trump mulls fresh trade war with China. U.S. considering restoring tariffs if Trump makes reprisals against Beijing the center of his 2020 reelection bid, which that's nothing new for Trump. I mean, he's been calling out China for 30 years at this point.
Yeah.
U.S. officials, including President Donald Trump, are increasingly banging the drums of a renewed trade war with China, spooking global markets that are already reeling from the unprecedented economic fallout of the coronavirus pandemic. Stock markets across Europe opened lower Monday, and okay, I guess I'm not going to read from foreign policy anymore. They don't like ad blockers.
Yeah, I'm finding it harder and harder to find good news sites that will allow me to keep my ad blocker on. So I'm having to go to different places like Zero Hedge, and so it's hard to find good. It's hard to find good current news.
Let me read from this one because it looks to be a little bit more to the point, and we know that Yahoo News doesn't have an ad blocker bar to go across. Uh, President Trump brought back a familiar threat this week: tariffs on Chinese imports. The president floated the idea of using tariffs to punish the Chinese government for its handling of the coronavirus crisis during an event at the White House on Thursday. The Washington Post reported the administration was exploring retaliatory options, including canceling some of the United States debt obligations to China. Economic officials quickly denied that plan when asked about it. Trump offered tariffs as an alternative. When you stop playing the game, you're really hurting the sanctity, the importance of the greatest, the best, the most tremendous currency on earth. But we can do it in other ways. We can do it with tariffs. We can do it in other ways, even beyond that, without having to play that game, said Trump.
Oh my goodness, that's a good impression. Right there.
Well, that's the markets have reflected what went on with this, of course, as we saw in contemporary, and for the past 2 days we've seen opens lower and closes lower because of the fact that this is coming out here. And I am a person that is actually I'm in the camp of tariffs, but not as a protectionist idea. I am in the camp of using tariffs as a way to lower tariffs worldwide. The only thing, like, if I was president right now, I would put tariffs. I would go to every country, figure out what the tariff was that they're imposing on us, and just impose the identical one. And if they want our tariffs gone, then they have to lower theirs. That would be the only thing. I'm not a protectionist about it at all, but
Well,
markets hate that word.
I get that that you're not using it specifically in a to protect American industry versus others, but in the end, especially, are you talking about import tariffs or export tariffs? I got to ask that because there's a difference on who it affects at the end, depending on which one you're talking about. If you're talking about import tariffs, and put in a tax on what people are or companies are bringing into this country, then the only people you're hurting are the people in this country, because countries are still going to bring their product in. They're going to raise those prices to cover that additional tariff, and all the American consumer is going to know is that they got to pay a higher price at the cash register.
Well, the point
Now,
of me doing it on import, and that would, because like Japan has an import tariff on cars, but we don't have an import tariff on Japanese cars. So it either convinces Japan to come back and make the cars in our country, which they have done with Toyota, very graciously, I will add that. But it makes it harder for us to sell a car in Japan, but easy for them to sell a car here. All I want to do is balance that a little bit so that we've got a fair playing field on that. I don't necessarily want to do it to say, hey, make more American jobs. I just want to balance what they're doing to us.
but it's not going to work out like that. All you're gonna do is make their products more expensive in the country, in this country, and they're just gonna look at you like, "Are you a dummy?"
But
I don't understand why any country imposes import tariffs on products coming into their own country, except as a protectionist measure, because all it does is make the prices higher for the consumers in that country. It doesn't affect anybody else. It doesn't affect the company. The company's going to raise prices to cover that. It doesn't affect the jobs in the country where that company is located, where they're making that product before they ship it out overseas. So, I mean,
Well-
I just don't see the point in them at all.
well, and what we have seen out of the Trump administration, a lot of the idea that I've had behind this as well. He's threatened it as a protectionist measure, but every time he does, the country that he's threatening it against says that, hey, you know what? Yeah, let's lower our tariff too a little bit. Let's make this a little bit more equal.
He has been using it as a bargaining tool,
Yeah.
and I think that's a dangerous game.
It
because
is absolutely.
Eventually, some country is going to call him on his bluff, and they're going to double down.
But this is more of a retaliatory form because, of course, the administration, possibly rightfully so, thinks that China mishandled this, and because of that, has caused death and destruction across the United States, including some of the breakdown of our social structure as well. I mean, nobody trusts anybody at this point, and I mean, it was bad before, but it's even worse in the past 2 months.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree to that. And that's part of that division that the government loves to foment, because then it makes us easier to divide up into smaller groups and control. It's divide and conquer. It's the oldest strategy in the book.
But like I said, the big thing that I'm worried about with this is, as low as we are in the market, well, we're not really low in the market anymore. We're coming back up, but the fact that we didn't make it back to 29,000 yet before any of this came out, the markets hate that word for a good reason. Whether the tariff is imposed or not, the markets are going to react as if it was imposed.
Yep.
And we're seeing some of that over the past couple days.
Yeah, and we're going to continue to see that until things smooth out, until Trump's comes, until Trump comes off his threats, or either comes through with them, he comes and follows through on them, or he just stops talking about it entirely, stops making those threats. You're going to have. And that's just natural. People get nervous, especially when you're dealing in futures. You're basically betting on the price of something, and tariffs are going to affect that price one way or another. And it makes people nervous. They like stability, and bandying about tariffs as a negotiating tool destroys that stability.
Yeah. And of course, we'll be seeing this until the next shiny thing catches the president's attention.
Yeah, you're not wrong about that. There's he definitely has a squirrel approach to international politics.
Squirrel!
Yep, and then we'll be off on some other tangent for however long he's in office.
All right. Well, I think that's all that I have here. So we're going to check the live chat one more time. And then, while we go through the outro, well, you're answering the last question here. I'm going to be opening the chest. So if you want to get in on the D Live chest, get ready to go for that. So we have Ron Helton votes for no government. Spartan showed up here. Spartan0000 sub to me now showed up. I lost my trust in D Live. They're now taking 25% of my donation compared to 10% in the past. Yeah, I noticed that today.
That kind of sucks. Hearing about them increasing their cut of your donations. So, like, why would you even use their donation thing if they're gonna just continue jacking up the rates? I get they got to pay for bandwidth and stuff. Just run ads like they do on Twitch.
Well, there's two things that go along with that. Of course, the bar for getting in on D Live and their partner program, getting the lemons, is almost. You can start collecting almost instantly as soon as you go on the platform. You don't have to clear 1,000 subs like you do on Google, and that's still lower than what Google's taken for Super Chat.
Right.
So
I don't know anything. I don't know anything about what's going on with Google anymore. I gave up on Google. I used to create episodic content that I uploaded to my YouTube channel. Now I just use my YouTube channel to just view other people's content. I watch, watch Brit and Freckles and Brit and the Jessica Green Show and What's Happening, and that's pretty much all I do. I watch Highcock 45 for gun information, and I just, as far as a monetized platform for content creation, I don't consider it anymore. Their policies are insane.
all right. Well, moving on here. Ron says this can only mean one thing, and Spartan says war.
Yeah, I saw that.
Ron says they're going to make D-Live profitable and sell it to Google or Face Schnook. I disavow that last name, even though it's funny as hell. Spartan says we must organize to clans against the great lemon theft, occupy Lemon City. Google's tried to do social media, but they failed each time. Yes, they have. But it's done well at penetrating other areas like cell phone OS. Yep. Yeah, I've got Android. I've got an array of Android sitting in front of me right now, actually.
I'm a happy Android user.
Yeah. Spartan says, I get 10%, but 25% is just theft. There should be a legal requirement for the user to agree to any raise in fees. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, that 25% is just pure ussery, in my opinion.
Yeah, for example, Spectrum raised my internet bill by $10 in the middle of COVID-19. And mine didn't go up, so. Ron says, my ISP never gives me a heads up either, and I'm supposed to be on a fixed price for bundling. All right, and the last couple here, Ron says Trump would be better off if he just didn't comment on everything, but then he would miss trolling his opponents.
Not wrong there.
Spartan says, I never purchased any of my lemons. It's all chest gains. Yep. And the last one we have for the night, thank you for everybody who came in, is Ron Helton saying, me either, and I just donate them to the content creators. So that is going to be it for the live chat tonight. Thanks everybody for coming in and live chatting and keeping us honest and keeping us on point as we go along here. And as we go down through the intro, I've got one last question that I always ask the guests when they're on. So politics is such a divisive and majorly angry topic here for the most part. So we always try to end the show on a positive note. So tell us about a hobby that you have that has nothing to do with work or gaming, or work or politics rather. I'm sorry. It could be a video game that you picked up. It could be a book that you're reading, an instrument you're playing, just something that helps you unwind at the end of all of this. And while we're doing that, I'm going to open the chest.
I love playing Minecraft. It's one of my favorite games. It's pretty much all that I stream. mostly because that's all my computer can handle, or used to be able to handle. I've been playing Minecraft for about 3 years now. I play modded Minecraft almost exclusively. I just cannot stand vanilla Minecraft. It's just so boring to me. There's maybe it's because I'm really not a good Minecrafter, and I'll be the first to admit to that. But that's my hobby. I get on and I can when I've got the time I'll play Minecraft for hours at a go. I just find it so relaxing most of the time.
I've never played Minecraft.
Oh man, you should come join me. I've got a modded server for my Discord community. A public I got a public modded server. You should come join me and we'll play some Minecraft.
I don't know if my computer will handle it or not.
If you're having trouble running Discord and streaming, yeah, you're probably right about that.
But I can stream. New Vegas with no
New
problem.
Vegas is New Vegas is an older game, and probably a lot better optimized than Minecraft. Minecraft runs on Java. Java is garbage to begin with, and Minecraft itself is just not really the best optimized.
Well, and that's what we're going to have for the show today here. Thanks everybody who came by and checked us out. And congratulations to Spartan on the 10 lemons that you got out of the chest. That's awesome for you. If you want to finish the conversation with me on any of this here, you can find me on any of the social media platforms that are linked below or above if you're on Facebook. But the most preferred, of course, is going to be if you can find me on Twitter. That is at EdsBlog Twitter with a 1 in place of the I. Come and check me out over there. If you want to finish the conversation with my guest, Joe, tell them where they can find you.
Well, you can find me on Twitter as well at the Chill Gamer MC, or you can find me sometimes on Twitch at twitch.tv/TCG Joe.
And I'm going to be putting that into the description for the replay of this. So I didn't get it in before the show, but I'll be putting it in afterwards, editing it in. So check that out. It'll be on the audio platforms as well. And if you're just catching up now and you want to go back and check out the show, it will be available once processing is done on demand over on YouTube or over on bitshoot.com. Go and check us out over there. Otherwise, it will be on the audio platforms, iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play. Remember, if you're over on iTunes, leave us that 5-star rating and a good review. That always helps us move up the charts, overcome Apple's algorithms, and really helps us out going forward. And if it's not a 5-star show, send me an email and tell me why, or send me something on social media and we'll see what we can do to fix it. And lastly, if you want to catch up with any of our content here, along with the content of other great creators, everything is backed up to freedomscoop.com. Go and check us out over there. Check out the Generational Gap. I'll be checking them out as soon as we're off the air here as well. You can check out the R-Rated Conservative. He'll be on later tonight. Freckles and Britt, as Joe mentioned over there, they'll be on over there later on. You can check all that out. You can check out Wyatt Birkenhoff, and Stephen Ignoramus will be back from his hiatus tomorrow, so go check him out. And also check out Stephen's new EP that will be featured on the website going forward. As we always say on this show, never take the words of bloggers, podcasters, or journalists as gospel. Find all the facts and draw your own conclusions. Hey, Joe, why don't you give us a last word?
Well, last word. Open up the damn economy. Have fun, guys. Be safe. Take care. If you're really afraid of this and what's going to happen, stay home. That's the best thing I can tell you. Stay home. The rest of us, we're going to go out. We're going to live our lives. We're going to try to get this economy going again. Love you. Thanks for having me on, Ed. It's been a pleasure.
And look forward for Joe in the future if he gets his podcast platform going up. Updates will be available on his Twitter or mine. Take care, everyone. Have a good night.
Bye.